Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Austin. I am one of the co-authors of this blog, and I just wanted to go over one of the most fundamental principles of lasting marriage, which is quality communication. It's so important that you and your spouse are open and honest with each other in your communication. It can resolve a lot of problems and even prevent problems from happening. However, it's not enough to just be open and honest. There are specific words and language and methods that you can use when communicating so that your spouse doesn't shut down and get defensive about what you're saying. In our blog post about quality communication, we discussed the four horsemen of marriage apocalypse. So we're just going to revisit some of those in these following scenarios that we're going to do some role playing with. So the first horseman of marriage apocalypse is criticism, which means that you're pointing out character flaws in your spouse. This means that you're saying something like, you are always doing such and such, or you are just such a lazy person, or something along those lines, just saying you are this. Rather than saying something specific and direct, you're just saying they're this way all the time. It's a character flaw. And it's not the best thing to point out with your spouse. It's one of the reasons why that, people, get in fights in marriage. It can, really lead you down a bad path if you make criticisms. And if your spouse does something to offend you or annoy you, it doesn't mean that you have to suffer in silence, but you just have to be careful about how you approach the situation. Making a complaint is okay, but criticizing is never okay if you want your marriage to last. So, first of all, you want to be very careful about your body language and your tone, just the whole delivery of what you say to your spouse, because nonverbal communication makes up 60 to 65% of communication, excuse me. So, what you say isn't as important as how you say it. So try to be kind and understanding with your voice and body language when approaching your spouse, when talking to them. And when you are making a complaint, be very direct and specific about something that bothered you. If you don't like something that your spouse did, then tell them exactly what they did that bothered you. And when you're going to approach your spouse, remember to use I language. If you start out any complaint by saying you did this or you were, it's going to make your spouse feel like you're attacking them. Instead, when you're going to make a complaint, you need to start off by saying something like, I felt this way, or just saying, I was hurt when you told me you didn't want to do this, something like that. So keep those methods in mind. We're going to practice a little bit. So let's come up with some kind of scenario. Let's say that when you and your spouse are brushing your teeth at night, they flick some toothpaste onto the mirror, and it is one of your pet peeves, and it annoys you when you have to clean it off and you just don't like it. So I want you to either talk out loud, either to yourself or to a partner, or write down in a journal what you would do to that scenario. So if your spouse is flicking out toothpaste onto the mirror, and that's one of your pet peeves, how would you approach them? So pause the video and think about it, write it out, say it out loud, whatever works for you. All right, so hopefully you came up with something that went along the lines of quality communication that we had taught you. We won't give you an exact script, but we hope that you were calm and understanding while you were practicing what you were going to say, and make sure that you started out with an I statement rather than saying something like, you always get toothpaste on the mirror. So while you make a complaint for the scenario, you just could say something like, I noticed that while you were brushing your teeth, you got some toothpaste on the mirror. And then you can try to make some restitution, like, I just wanted to ask if you could be a little more careful, or if you just wanted to wipe it off afterwards, just be very calm and make some kind of restitution or plan together. And of course, this is a pretty simple scenario. So let's try something just a little bit harder. In this next scenario that we're going to do, let's say that you are at a family gathering and your spouse said something that's a little personal, something that you wouldn't want shared with your family. So I want you to, again, pause the video and think about what you would say. So after you pause the video and think about it, we'll kind of go into, what would be best. All right, so this one can be a little more tricky since you are at a family gathering, but make sure that you do find one-on-one time to talk to your spouse and talk about how that instance made you feel. Remember to be specific and direct and use an I statement and don't criticize. Maybe you wrote or said something like, I noticed that you were talking about this, and talk about how it made you feel. Like it made me feel uncomfortable or it hurt my feelings, something along those lines. Just be open and honest. And it's okay to make complaints. You don't have to just be silent in your marriage because making a complaint, you and your spouse grow together and you learn from your mistakes. But let's reverse the rules, excuse me, a little bit, because another important factor in quality communication is how you react and listen to your spouse. Perhaps they're making a complaint about something that you did. And one of the horsemen of a marriage apocalypse is getting defensive. So make sure that you try to stay as open and understanding as possible while listening to your spouse. When your spouse is making a complaint about you, make sure that you're actively listening. Don't think about what you're going to say next or how you're going to win this argument. You need to think about what they're saying. You can always summarize or ask what you think they're saying or what they're feeling. Like if they're talking about, hey, you didn't do the dishes, and then you could say like, hey, I understand that you're upset that I didn't do the dishes, something like that. And so you can see if you're on the same page. And if they're complaining, make sure that you also use I statements. You can say, I didn't do my part and do the dishes. I'm sorry. And while your spouse is talking, make sure that you validate their emotions and feelings. You could say something like, I understand that you really wanted me to do the dishes, and I can see why you're feeling frustrated, or however they may be feeling. And then you can make restitution and resolve the argument, and that can make things a lot better. So some of the key takeaways of this lesson were to not criticize, making, character flaw statements like you always, you were, you do this all the time, something like that. And another one is to be very careful about your nonverbal communication, because how you say things are more important than what you say, but what you say is still very important. And make sure that you always start off using the word I rather than you. So use I statements. And when other people are, talking to you, communicating with you, making complaints about you, that you're actively listening. And, when you communicate back to them, make sure that you validate your spouse's emotions. So thank you so much for watching this video, and feel free to tell us how you think we did. Thank you.